Howdy, folks. This is Mr. Ryan, and we're continuing with our learning about supply and demand in economics. And what we just finished learning in the last lesson was we learned about a market graph. We learned about the forces of supply and demand. Okay. First, we learned that a market is a place where buyers and sellers meet, right? And we said that it's a place. It might not be a physical place because it can be an electronic place, like on eBay. It can be meeting somebody on the street. There are many illegal and nefarious markets that exist on the street sometimes. But it can be any kind of, whatever you can consider a meeting place in any way, and there's a buyer and a seller, and they're exchanging products and money. We call that a market. They don't even have to be exchanging products for money. They could be exchanging products for products, and it would still be a market. Okay, but we deal in money because that's sort of the most popular way of buying things. And what we said is that buyers make up the force of demand, where the sellers make up the force of supply. And demand in a market is made up of all the buyers who are willing and able to buy. And that supply, the force of supply, is made up of all the sellers who are willing and able to buy, willing and able to sell that product. So you have those who are willing and able to sell, those that are willing and able to buy. They come together because they're both willing and they're both able to buy and sell. They do that, okay? They work with each other. They agree on a price and they agree on a quantity. And what we learned is that the price that they agree on and the quantity that they agree on is called market equilibrium. Okay, so we wind up with, right there, market equilibrium. And that's that point. And that determines what we call the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity that will be sold in the market. It is the price where the buyers and sellers both agree on that price, and the quantity where the buyers and sellers both agree on that quantity, okay? And what we learned in the last class is that demand is a negative relationship between price and quantity. That's the law of demand. And then that supply represents a positive relationship between price and quantity. That's the law of supply, right? And so then what we learned was that these forces of supply and demand, based on changes in buyers' willingness and ability to buy, can result in a change in the demand curve, that the demand curve can shift to the right or shift to the left when the ability to buy and the willingness to buy change. Similarly, sometimes the willingness to sell and the ability to sell changes for the sellers, and that results in a shift of the supply curve to the right or to the left. And this is what we concluded. We shifted the curves on the board, right? And we saw that when there's a decrease in demand, that means there's a decrease in the willingness and or the ability of buyers to buy. So that's a decrease in demand. The demand curve shifts to the left, which results in a decrease in equilibrium price and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. But when the willingness and ability of buyers to buy gets larger, they're more willing or more able, then the demand curve, then demand increases, and the demand curve shifts to the right, causing an increase in equilibrium quantity and an increase in equilibrium price and an increase in equilibrium quantity. Similarly, When the willingness and ability of suppliers to produce and sell decreases, we have a left shift of the supply curve. It shifts to the left, resulting in an increase in equilibrium price and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. And then lastly, we saw that when there is an increase in supply, that means an increase in the willingness and or ability of sellers to produce and sell. When they are more able and more willing to produce and sell, that's an increase in supply. It shifts the supply curve to the right. Then we have a decrease in equilibrium price and an increase in equilibrium quantity. So that's where we're starting at this point. That's a summary of what we have learned so far about market graphs. And now what this lesson is, this lesson and the next lesson, they're going to go together. In this lesson, we are going to talk about the things that affect a buyer's willingness or ability to buy. These things over here, the income of the buyers, will affect their willingness and ability to buy. The popularity of the product will affect buyers' willingness and ability to buy. The price of products that are related to this product, like peanut butter is related to jelly, right? Hot dogs are related to hot dog buns. Hot dogs are also related to mustard. And cheese is often related to hamburger patties, okay? So I'm feeling sort of hungry right now, so all my examples are food, right? But we'll come up with some other examples too. So anyway, prices of related products will affect a buyer's willingness and ability to buy. The number of buyers in the market affects the overall willingness and overall ability of buyers to buy, and then the expectations of what the price of the product will be in the future, that's going to affect their willingness and their ability to buy as well, okay? So let's look at each one of these and see how they will affect the demand curve. We're looking just at the demand curve, so we're only going to be looking at these two situations right now, either an increase in demand or a decrease in demand, okay? So let's see here. Let's look at income. Well, let's talk about the difference between a normal good and an inferior good, okay? Normal goods are, or normal products, are products that you would buy if you didn't really have much of a restriction on your income. Now, we could go as far, there actually is kind of a third category called luxury goods, but in the regular analysis of supply and demand, we tend to only look at, we group luxury goods kind of in with normal goods, okay? But there is a big difference over here between a normal good and an inferior good. An inferior good is, or a product, is going to be something that you would buy, that you will buy instead of the normal good, because you can't afford the normal good. So you would buy the normal good, like you would go buy Starbucks coffee because you really like, because Starbucks coffee is high quality, and that's sure a matter of opinion or whatnot, but it is to most of the people who are buying lots and lots of Starbucks coffee and spending a lot of money on it are saying that it is a high quality coffee or a higher quality coffee, okay? But then if you can't afford Starbucks coffee, you might go buy like the store brand of coffee because you can't afford the Starbucks, or even if you can't afford the Maxwell House or the Folgers. You might buy the cheap version of coffee, and we would call that cheap version an inferior good. Now, when I say inferior, I don't mean that by quality it is a worse product. What I mean is, in general, to the public, we consider it a less desirable product than the normal good, okay? So we're gonna distinguish there. So the idea is this, is when there is an increase in income, when incomes go up, that's one possibility. The other possibility is that income will go down. Now, when I say income going up or going down, I mean in general for all consumers. in general, all consumers have more money, or in general, all consumers have less money. Okay, and this can happen for various reasons in the economy. Okay, when income for the buyers in that market, when it goes up, let's write normal good here. A normal good versus an inferior good. An inferior good. When income goes up, you get to stop buying the inferior good and start buying the normal good. So instead of buying the thing that you replaced the normal good with, instead of buying the inferior good, you don't have to buy the store brand anymore. You can now buy the name brand because you have more money. Okay? So what will happen is when income goes up, demand for normal goods will also go up. So we'll have an increase in the demand for a normal good. But because people are now buying more of the normal good, they're going to stop buying the inferior good so much. So we're going to have a decrease in demand for the inferior good. So here's what will happen. When incomes go up, demand for normal goods will increase. So that's going to bring us right over here. It's going to bring us to here. Then, when demand for the normal good increases, the demand curve for the normal good will shift to the right. So that's going to look like this. Okay, there's the demand curve, right? It's going to shift to the right. So it's going to move over to the right. We're going to call that D prime. And we'll throw a supply curve in here. And you can see here, this is the old equilibrium point, right? That's old equilibrium price. And now we have a new equilibrium price here. We're going to call that price prime, okay? And so that's an increase. Look, the price went up. So we're going to have an increase in equilibrium price. And look what happened to quantity. This is our old quantity down here. And with our shift in the demand curve over to the right, we have a new equilibrium quantity, which I'll call Q prime. And look, we also had an increase in that. So when demand increased for the normal good, we had an increase in the price. So the price of that normal good is going to go up a little bit. But also the quantity that's produced and sold will also go up a little bit. People are going to buy more, the price will go up a little bit, but because people have more money, they're going to say, well, that's okay because I really like this stuff and I can afford to buy it now. Okay? So the chain reaction goes like this. Increase in income, increase in demand for a normal good, right shift of the demand curve, increase in price of the normal good, increase in quantity of the normal good. And that's the entire, we call it market dynamics because when one thing happens, it sets off a chain reaction where lots of things change. And that's what I'm showing you here. One change, two changes, increase in demand. Three changes, increase in price. Four changes, increase in quantity. Now let's see what happens to the inferior good when income goes up. When income goes up, demand for the inferior good will go down. People will want to buy less of it because now they can afford the other thing. Demand goes down. That means that the demand curve will shift to the left. Then the price will decrease and also the quantity demanded will decrease. The price will go down a little bit and people will demand less of it. Okay? So that's why what will happen is in times where incomes are high, that's a good time to maybe invest in or in normal goods, in name brand goods, okay? And not to focus so much on the store brand things because people are going to buy less of that and the price is going to go down. So they're not going to make as much, okay? All right, so that's if income goes up. Now let's see what happens if income goes down. When people have less money to spend in general, okay, in the whole market for these goods, okay, when people have less money to spend, they're going to start buying more of the inferior good and they can't really afford to buy the normal good. And that means that demand for the normal good is going to decrease, but demand for the inferior good will go up. So when people don't have as much money, there are still businesses that are going to be doing very well. For example, the businesses that produce and sell inferior goods, they're probably going to make lots of money. And so, when incomes go down, demand for normal goods goes down, which is going to result in a left shift of the demand curve, a decrease in equilibrium price, and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. See, let's do this. Let's draw a market curve. We've got a demand curve. We've got a supply curve. The demand curve is going to shift to the left. So the new one is over here. And look what happened. Here's the old equilibrium point. Here's the new equilibrium point. That's a decrease in price and a decrease in quantity. And you can draw one of these. Every single time you see one of these changes, you can draw yourself a little market curve and see what happens to the supply or the demand curve. Okay? In this case, only the demand curve is moving. All right? When income goes down, the demand for an inferior good goes up, and so we have an increase in the price and an increase in the quantity produced and sold of that of the inferior good. Okay, so that's how income affects the demand curve for different kinds of goods. Now let's talk about popularity, the popularity of a product. Okay, you already understand this. It makes sense. I'm just going to show it to you in the market dynamics. But the idea is this, is sometimes certain products are more popular. Sometimes those products are less popular. For example, I don't see a lot of people nowadays wearing what are called Jordache jeans. But when I was growing up back in the 1980s, Jordache jeans were all the rage. People were buying, well, yeah, I guess everybody. It was boys and girls wearing Jordache jeans. Jordache jeans were very popular. You could also think about it in terms of Nike shoes. Nike shoes are very popular, okay? But I'm sure there was a time when Nike shoes first came out, they probably had a hard time at first trying to get people to try their shoes. Nowadays, Nike shoes are very popular. They haven't even really wavered in popularity. But there have been other kinds of shoes that have wavered in popularity. Again, when I was younger, Puma shoes were very popular. Nowadays, I don't see a lot of advertisements for Puma shoes, okay? Popularity, here's the deal. There's two possibilities. Popularity, the popularity of a product, how popular it is among people to buy. When popularity increases, so we have let me write it like this. When we have an increase in the popularity of a product, what's going to happen is people want it more. So an increase in popularity is going to lead to an increase in demand. And then, once demand increases, once demand for it increases, see, what's happening with popularity is people are more willing to buy it. That doesn't necessarily make them more able to buy it, but it definitely makes them more willing to buy it. See, over here in income, people were more able to buy normal goods. That made them less willing to buy inferior goods. And remember, it's all about willingness and ability of buyers to buy a product. Here, the popularity, the only thing that's, in my opinion, the only thing that's really being affected is that people are now more willing to buy the thing. Okay? When I was back 3 or 4 years ago, I had no interest in having an iPhone. Lots of people had iPhones. They were popular, but not for me. I was not willing to buy an iPhone even though I was able to buy an iPhone. I decided, no, I'm not going to buy an iPhone. Eventually, after seeing lots of family members and friends that had iPhones, I decided, you know what, now I am more willing to buy an iPhone, and I bought an iPhone. Okay? All the while, I was able to buy the iPhone. So when a product becomes more popular, people become more willing to buy, and therefore demand will increase. When demand increases, the demand curve will shift to the right. Demand curve shifts to the right, D prime. There's the supply curve. Look what happened. Price went up. We went from here. Price went up. Quantity went up. Increase in price, increase in quantity. And there's your market dynamic. Okay? On the other hand, when something becomes less popular, it used to be popular, but now people don't like it as much. Some of the kinds of things that can cause products to become less popular is, let's say that there is negative news or negative information in the news about that product. For example, product liability. It becomes dangerous. There's a big lawsuit, and now everybody thinks that that product is dangerous, which has happened before, and legitimately some things are more dangerous. Now people are going to want to buy it less. They are less willing to buy. Less willing to buy. That's probably what happened to Jordache jeans and Puma sneakers. People just, they became less popular and people were less willing to buy. And so what's going to happen is that's going to lead to a decrease in demand. And when demand decreases, let's draw our curve over here, our market graph. We've got a supply curve, we've got a demand curve, but now demand is decreasing. So we've got D prime. So look what happened to the price and the quantity. They went down. The price went down and the quantity went down. And so we'll have a decrease in equilibrium price and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. Okay? All simply because the product became more or less popular. This is one of the places, by the way, if you're a marketing person, if you're going into marketing or you're interested in marketing, this is one of the main places where you will be working. Your job, part of your job working for the company, is to get people to like your product more and want your product more. You are trying to cause buyers to become more willing. That's what you're trying to do. Let's move on to price of related products. Complements and substitutes. Let's talk about the difference between a complement good and a substitute good. Put it right up here, complements and substitutes. And really it's the prices of complements and substitutes. All right? A complement good is a good that goes with another good, and I mentioned that before. Peanut butter goes with jelly. If you buy a lot of peanut butter, you may also be buying a lot of jelly, unless you're making a lot of peanut butter cookies. But if you're making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you're buying peanut butter and you're buying jelly. You're probably also buying bread. So now we have 3 complement goods: peanut butter, jelly, and bread. Hot dogs, hot dog buns, and mustard, right? I mentioned that before. Oftentimes when you buy a cell phone, you buy a cell phone case. So cell phones and cell phone cases are complement goods. You can look at particular cell phones, okay? When the iPhone 6 went up when people bought more iPhone 6s, they probably bought more iPhone 6 cases. But when people started buying fewer iPhone 6s, they probably started buying fewer iPhone 6 cases. They are related, or they are complement goods. Now, what about a substitute good? Substitute goods are goods that replace each other. If you decide to buy more of one of these things, then you'll probably buy less of the substitute. A great example here in the Atlanta area of substitutes is Coke and Pepsi. Okay? Now, I'm sure the people at Coke would say Pepsi is not a substitute for Coke. It's way inferior than Coke is. And I'm sure Pepsi would say the same thing. Coke is not a substitute for Pepsi. Pepsi is a unique product that is better than Coke, and that's what they want you to think. Why? Because they want their product to be more popular. They want people to be more willing to buy it. But in reality, the reason that you are buying a Coke is the same reason you would be buying a Pepsi. And therefore, Coke and Pepsi are substitute products. I would also say that sweet tea is a substitute for Coke. Water is a substitute for Coke. Water is a substitute for sweet tea and Pepsi. In general, they are all beverages. So they are all substitutes for one another. So if you decide to buy a sweet tea, then you are deciding not to buy a Pepsi, and therefore you have substituted your purchase of a Pepsi with the purchase of a sweet tea. Okay? Same thing with if you decide to have coffee for breakfast or with your breakfast instead of an orange juice with your breakfast. And I know I'm sticking on, buying a bicycle for transportation is a substitute for buying a car for transportation. Choosing to take public transportation instead of buying a car. That is also a substitute. And it really depends on the situation. Sometimes people will choose public transportation if traveling by car is difficult, expensive, or whatnot. Okay, so we have products that are complements, they go together, and products that are substitutes. They work against each other. It's an either this or that. Okay, so here's the deal. What we're really dealing with is the prices of complements or substitutes. And so what we're doing is we're thinking of our product market. What's happening in our product market when there's a price change in the other market? When the complement good goes up in price, what's going to happen in our market? When the substitute good goes up in price, what's going to happen in our market? And here's what I'm going to say. Let's start with the price of a complement. So I'll do P sub C. When there is an increase in the price of a complement good, when the price of peanut butter goes up, what will happen to the quantity demanded of peanut butter? Well, based on the law of demand, when the price goes up, people will demand less of that good. So if the price of peanut butter goes up, people will demand less peanut butter. And if they are demanding less peanut butter, they're buying less peanut butter, aren't they going to be less willing to buy jelly? Because they go together. Less peanut butter means less jelly. So the willingness to buy jelly goes down because the ability to buy peanut butter has gone down. So an increase in the price of a complement good is going to lead to a decrease in the demand for our good. And when the demand for our product goes down, that's going to result in a decrease in the equilibrium price and a decrease in the equilibrium quantity. On the other hand, let's say that the price of a complement good goes down. Let's say that the price, let's say that the price of iPhone 6s goes down. So now, because of the law of demand, because the price went down, quantity demanded is going to go up. People are going to buy more iPhone 6s because the price went down. And when they buy more iPhone 6s, they're going to need more cases for their iPhone 6. And therefore, a decrease in the price of a complement good is going to result in an increase in demand. That looks like something different. I don't know what that is. It's going to result in an increase, that's not much better, an increase in the demand for iPhone 6 cases. And when demand increases for that good, we're going to have an increase in the price and an increase in the quantity, in the equilibrium quantity. Okay? So that's complement goods. Now let's look at substitute goods. This one's going to be the opposite, basically. Price of a substitute good. When the price of a substitute good goes up, what are you going to do? Let's say you're buying Coke. You like having a Coke once a day or something, or you just buy one at the store. But then you go in and the price went up, and you're like, well, I didn't like it that much. I'm not paying that much more just for a Coke, but I still want something to drink, so maybe I'll go over here and I'll get a water. Okay, and so, because the price went up of one good, you're now going to buy something different that substitutes in its place. So that means you're more willing to buy the other thing because the price of this thing went up. So when the price of a substitute good goes up, that's going to lead to an increase in demand for this other product, for our product. Over in that market, in the market for water, because over in that market for the substitute good, the price went up, people are now, because of the law of demand, the price went up, they're demanding less of that product over there. And they may come over to our market and buy the thing that we're selling over here. And when they come over here, that means an increase in demand. They're more willing to buy over here. So that's an increase in demand, an increase in the price, and an increase in the equilibrium quantity. And then lastly, what if the price of a substitute good goes down? What's that going to lead to? Okay, well, let's say the price of cars goes down. And there are people who take public transportation because it's cheaper. But the price of cars goes down. And now they're thinking to themselves, gosh, I've been doing public transportation, but now cars are looking a lot cheaper than they used to be. I think I'm going to leave public transportation and I'm going to go buy a car, and then I'll be able to drive the car. It made you more willing and more able to go buy a car because the prices of cars went down. And because the prices of a substitute good went down, you're looking over at that product saying, I want to move over to that market because their price went down. So you're going to leave this market and you're going to go over to the market for the substitute good. Leaving the market means that the price is going to, it means that demand is going to decrease. So we're going to have a decrease in demand, and then that's going to result in a left shift of the demand curve, a decrease in equilibrium price, and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. Okay? And that is because of, that is the prices of related products, the prices of complements and the prices of substitutes. Okay? Let's move on to number of buyers. Number of buyers is a really simple one. In fact, really all the things that we're talking about right now sort of filter through the simple idea of number of buyers in a market. If we have an increase in the number of buyers, I mean, that itself is kind of the definition of an increase in demand. When there are more, and what this really means is number of buyers. It's not number of buyers in the market. What it really means is the number of buyers available in the area, okay? So if we have a market in the United States for a particular product, and we then have more people in the United States, so the population is increased for some reason or another, when there's more people in the area, there are more people available to become buyers in our market. And when there are more people that can be buyers in the market, that usually results in more buyers in the market. And when there are more buyers in the market, that's going to lead to an increase in demand. Okay? Increase in demand will result in an increase in equilibrium price and an increase in equilibrium quantity because the demand curve shifted to the right. Okay? But what if a whole bunch of people move out of an area? Let's say we've got a city, and this has happened sometimes in some counties or cities or whatnot, that people don't want to live in that area anymore. It's less desirable to live in that area, so they just move away in large groups. This actually happened to me. I lived down in Florida for a while. I grew up in Florida, and in the mid 20s, around 2006, 2007, prices were going crazy, and a lot of people were thinking, you know what, I'm going to move away and go live somewhere else because things are crazy around here. They were also probably upset about the hurricanes. I know that's part of the reason I moved away. And so there were fewer buyers in the area. Now, I'm sure South Florida probably didn't care one way or the other. There are already so many people down there. But nonetheless, people move away from areas. And when they move away, if there are fewer people in the area, that means there's fewer people to buy in that market. And because there are fewer buyers, there are fewer people to be demanders. There are fewer people who can be willing and able to buy. Therefore, fewer buyers means a decrease in demand. A decrease in demand results in a left shift of the demand curve, a decrease in equilibrium price, and a decrease in equilibrium quantity. And again, just to sort of, I know I haven't done one in a few minutes, but we can draw the supply curve, we can draw the demand curve. Decrease in demand is a left shift of the demand curve, so there's D prime. And you can see here equilibrium quantity, new equilibrium quantity. We had a decrease in demand, or in quantity, and a decrease in price. Okay? All right, let's talk about this last one here, the expectations of future prices. The expectations of future prices. let's say that you're going to buy something, okay? Let's say that you're going to buy a car. And you find out that maybe in 2 months, the price of that car is going to go down. And you're thinking to yourself, if the price is going to go down in 2 months, maybe I should just wait to buy the car. And if you wait to buy the car, what you're basically doing is you're saying right now, today, I am less willing to buy the car. I am stepping out of the market. So you are now no longer a demander for that product because you are no longer willing to buy today. You're going to wait a couple months because you think the price is going to go down. So you step out of the market. That's a decrease in demand for the whole market. So here's the deal. If I'm going to put P sub F here, that's an E. I'm going to put P sub F here. That means future price, okay? Or I'll put F sub FE. That's future price expectation. Future price expectation. If you expect that the price in the future is going to go down, then that means you're going to step out of the market and be less willing to buy. So that's going to be a decrease in demand, and I'm going to put a little T here. Well, maybe not. I'll put an N there for now. That's going to be a decrease in demand right now. So we care about what demand is today, not in the future. And what I'm saying is demand now is going to decrease if people expect the price to go down in the future. They're going to leave the market now, wait the 2 months for the price to go down, then they're going to step back into the market, and then they're going to buy the thing. That way, they can pay less money for it, because that's what rational people would do, is they would pay less money for it, okay? So if everybody's sort of expecting the price to go down of a product, then right now the demand for that product is going to decrease. The demand curve is going to shift to the left. Then the price will decrease, almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the quantity, the equilibrium quantity, will decrease. Let's look at the alternative. The alternative is that we expect the future price, the future expected price, to go up. So there's a product that you want to buy, and you kind of catch wind that over the next couple months, the price of that item, it's going to go up. Okay, well, actually, from your direction, I guess this is going to go up over time. And so you're thinking, I better go buy that thing now because the price is going up. So I want to go buy it now while it's cheaper. So that means if the price in the future is going to go up, then you're going to jump into the market and say, I got to go buy it right now. And that means that the demand in that market now is going to increase. And when the demand increases, the demand curve will shift to the right, and sure enough, the price will go up, and the equilibrium quantity will also go up, okay? So these are all of, well, not all of, these are the most popular, the most discussed, the ones that are probably the most, the ones I expect you to know. These are all the factors that cause a change in demand. And because they're causing a change in demand, they are affecting a change in the market, okay? And the reason that these things change demand is because they affect buyers' willingness and ability to buy, okay? In the next video, I'm going to go over all the same kind of thing, but I'm going to do it for supply. We're going to talk about all the things that affect change in supply.